Okay, hey.
In progress.
We are recording. That's right. Pew, 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 recording. And this is Queen Mab, not my real name, but don't want my students to find this. And today I am talking with a person who is so freaking funny and who I had such a blast working with and hanging out with at Hollywood Fringe. Okay, I need to make sure I remember all the things you do. So you do comedy, you do podcasting. What am I missing? You do solo shows.
I do one solo show so far. I drum like you.
That's right. You're a drummer. Yes.
I like to sing. What like that's not something the extent of my singing has been at karaoke, and I was once on a karaoke league. It was very competitive.
Wow.
Which is ridiculous, but it felt right.
It sounds right. I mean, karaoke is kind of an intense thing.
It is. It is.
Okay. So podcaster, competitive karaoke person, drummer, solo show, comedy.
Cat owner.
Oh my goodness.
That's Finn. That's Finn. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
He's like, peace, mother. Yeah, he's done. He's done with that. Okay. So my first question for you, I like to keep it really open-ended, is just tell us your story.
Oh shit. Okay. I was born on a chilly October morning in 1985, October 6th. It was a Sunday morning. Okay. I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I went to college in Pennsylvania. I got a theater degree. This is after I thought that I would do music. Most of my teenage years were spent thinking that I was going to be in a band and travel, either sing in a band or drum in a band or something like that. So I tried to go to college for music because I didn't know all of the percussive instruments like you do.
Yeah.
They didn't accept me into the program. And anyways, I discovered acting. There were like a couple of movies that I remember seeing in 2004 that made me go, oh my God, I have to fucking act.
Do you remember what they were?
Yes, I do. $1 Million Baby and Monster.
Whoa. Well, those are two serious movies. I will confess, I haven't seen them, but I know that they're like really intense movies.
They're really intense, but especially Monster. But admittedly, Charlize Theron's one of my ultimate crushes, but watching her play Eileen Wuornos in Monster just like fucked me up in such a good way. I'm sorry. This F-bombs were okay or no?
Totally.
Great. And it was just really intense, just really inspired me. It was just like the intensity, just like the commitment just of these. And it's so funny too, because I grew up being really inspired by Robin Williams and everything else, but the comedy right in the drama. They go hand in hand. If you can do comedy, you could do anyway. Those movies really inspired me, and I was like, I want to act. So I became a theater major, and it was so funny because I was so eager to be involved. So even when I wasn't acting in a production, I was doing like backstage stuff. By the time I graduated, I was pretty convinced that I was going to go into comedy, though. This is so funny because I haven't mentioned anything about comedy. Meanwhile, when I was in 5th grade and we had to draw what we wanted to be when we grew up, I drew myself as a stand-up comedian. I get all of that from my dad. My dad is someone who has been not really pursuing comedy, but is basically a comic without really putting in all of the necessary work per se. I am basically my dad incarnate that way. So I've always loved making people laugh, but for some reason, but I was also very drawn to the serious performance aspect too. So I love the dichotomy of that. But I think it just made sense. By the way, I just got a haircut. Oh no, that has nothing to do with it. That was just a straight up cat hair. I'm a little all over the place. When I was in college, I remember feeling like I discovered that people really glorified stand-up comedy. And I loved making people laugh. And I knew I could make people laugh. So I think I got fixated on it then because it was so glorified. And I liked making people laugh, right? So stand-up comedy, that makes sense. So after college, I moved to New York for 4 years. And I took, improv classes at UCB. And I did some improv and I did stand up around town, but I was never focused. I wasn't like buckle down, focus on that shit. I was in my early 20s. So I was running around, doing a little bit of comedy here and there, but mostly smoking pot and just kind of being silly, just, a little unfocused. In 2013, I came to LA. Finally, it was a relationship that actually brought me here at the time, which ended very shortly thereafter, which, well, I mean, thank God, though, it did get me out to LA, which is ultimately where I wanted to be, because I really wanted to do film and things like that. But at some point, I think I always knew, though, that I wanted to do a lot of things. But I kind of forced myself to maybe stay in the stand-up comedy department for a while. So I would get these ideas in my head that, well, I need to do this thing, so let me just focus on that. But I was never really focused. But my point is that I feel like I've been trying to fit into certain boxes. But I've always been interested in doing all of the above, like I would love to have a band on the side and do comedy and be in films, and then at some point, do a dramatic film and all this shit. Okay, so I moved to LA and I started auditioning and I got really involved in sketch comedy. So I was a part of a sketch show at Second City Hollywood 3 years. And doing that opened up a lot of doors for me in terms of just all of the people that I met. I met so many people in the comedy community that way. And I have continued to expand with those people doing various projects. For instance, my comedy partner, Maria Wilson, I met doing that particular sketch show. And we ended up creating our two-person show. And our comedy duo is called Lady Farts. So we created a self-titled show for the 2018 Fringe. And that was really great. And the reason why my comedy partner, Maria, and I connected so well was because even though we were both really zany and goofy and were really into just like the absurdities of comedy and a little slapstick and all of that, we also knew that we wanted our comedy to still serve a purpose. And we kind of quickly discovered that honoring our truths, the ones that we would prefer not to honor, the awkward truths, the absurd, just the shameful stuff. That's what we based our show around.
So that's really interesting. Can you give me like an example of what was like a shameful truth that you based a show around?
Absolutely. Now this is also has gone into my solo show. But when we first did our Lady Fart show, we would do like a series of sketches and confessions and whatnot. At some point, like I bring out a sleeping bag during our Lady Fart show, and I explain to the audience that I was a childhood bedwetter and that I still have pretty severe bladder issues. So I talk about that, but I talk about it, in a way that, I think is pretty comedic. Of course, people are going to have their own reactions. Sometimes people are, oh, and it's like, no, we can laugh at this. This is the purpose. But there's that, and I mean, that's probably the best example that I can give, and even though the show itself is called Lady Farts. The show is not about bodily functions, but there is a moment where my comedy partner, discusses, being in school when she was young and having a moment where she, farted in class when she was, like she was raising her hand. She was really excited to answer. She was very overzealous, and then she let out a fart in school. And it's so funny because what kid doesn't have those moments? But it's like they still define so many things, certain things in our lives that happened when we were young, even if they seem so trivial, have stuck with us, but it's just fun ways to, and then how we kind of carry that through. And, these things, we're continuously humbled by events in our lives that we find ourselves in or that we create or whatnot. I'm vigorously petting my cat right now as I talk to you.
I love it. Okay, so you were talking about that you were led to acting because of an interest in drama, in like the dramatic aspects, like these really intense movies. But then, comedy is like I think it's kind of what you're known for, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what I wanted to know is, let's say like, you've got a night free and you're going to watch some Netflix or whatever. Like, what are you drawn to watch? Are you like, dude, I'm going to watch some comedy? Or are you like, oh man, I need to watch some drama? Like what, or does it depend? Like, what are you drawn to?
Okay. That actually changed for me this past year. When I put something on, 98% of the time it's comedy. It's something more lighthearted. Mm-hmm. There was a time, and it's so funny because it's for me now, for me, it's now, how is this going to make me feel? Because, in the beginning of the pandemic, things were very heavy. Simultaneously, I was going through some stuff. I'd gotten sober. There was like, an antidepressant situation. I had tried, it was just, there were a lot of things happening. And I also started listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks. And it just kind of dawned on me, I don't have to watch something that's going to bring out really intense, maybe negative feelings or sadness or things like that. It started to feel a little bit like emotional masturbation. So for me, for a while now, it's like I'll put on Broad City, or I totally watched the shit out of Ted Lasso and I can't wait for the third season. That's typically what I'll put on now, just because it makes me feel lighter. My solo show is called I Have Too Many Feelings. And the truth is that it really kind of feels like I do. I can be all over the map and I'm like, I don't need to watch this shit that's going to make me feel, I don't need to watch Law and Order right now. Now, don't get me wrong. It can be tempting. If somebody were to put on Law and Order, we could be 5 minutes in and I wouldn't want them to change the channel, because then at that point I'd be into it. But I'm not actively choosing to watch things that are going to make me feel some kind of, it doesn't feel good anymore. I used to love watching horror movies because it excited me and it got my adrenaline up. And now it's like, I don't want that shit anymore. It doesn't make me feel good, I just want to roll around on the floor in a pile of puppies and watch comedy,
That's really interesting. I think it's interesting to me because I find sometimes watching comedy, I actually get really, really uncomfortable. Like even watching shows like, I think Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is designed to make us uncomfortable, but I had a very hard time getting into that initially because I was just so uncomfortable for her. And I had that with Parks and Rec. Like I have this with all these shows that have this reputation for being very lighthearted. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't.
Have you watched Pen 15?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And ironically, that is one that I love, probably because I teach middle school. And I've tried to get my friends who I went to middle school with to watch it because I think they did. We're about the same age. I'm I think a year younger than you, but they nailed it. Like they completely nailed it, and all the technology and all the instant messenger and all that type of stuff. But none of my friends will watch it because they're like too afraid to face that part of their lives. And I'm like, dude, I live with that every day.
That's hysterical. And that's so true. But that show just killed me. But I'll be honest with you too. I think even after like getting later into the second season of Pen 15, it started to feel like it was just like a slew of awkwardness that I ate up at first. And then I was like, all right, I need a little bit of a break. But it's so funny.
Right.
God, it's good. It's so good. Yeah.
Right. No, definitely.
So what do you watch mostly?
I'm like addicted to like period dramas and stuff like that. And I feel guilty about that because like I'm funny and everyone's like, oh, you're funny, comedy. And so I'm like, okay, I need to watch comedy. But I have a really hard time like making myself watch comedy. I'm like, okay, time to watch stand-up comedy. Like, no, give me corsets, give me bonnets. Ah!
Yeah, I think you should go. Look, I think there are a lot of people in comedy making a living doing comedy who don't really fucking watch comedy.
Really?
Go with what you're feeling. That's really what it comes down to, because I think I spent years not watching enough comedy myself. That's how I felt. So this is only like a newer thing for me. I was obsessed a few years back with the show Scandal. Like that was my show. Like I was so into Scandal. So it's just a thing. These are phases. These are phases. It's it shouldn't, comes down to the word should, right? I'm a fucking hypocrite because I should all over myself all the time, but just watch what feels good. So are you into so I don't watch everything that you're talking about. I never watch. So give me an example. Would Bridgerton be one of them? Because I've heard of that show.
I watched Bridgerton. It was okay for me. I think everybody was very excited about the sex on it. And I thought the sex was like not that exciting. Just me personally. I was like, yeah, this is kind of like watching some dogs. Like, okay, okay. And then I was really into the Poldark show for a while. That's like a PBS, or no, it's BBC. Excuse me, it's BBC. I should make that distinction. Let's not take credit for things Americans didn't do. These kinds of old costume drama-y type shows. I actually don't watch Downton Abbey, which is probably one that everybody likes a lot. Yeah.
But what do you watch then? Give me an example then of a show. That's the ones you just told me on
that's
PBS.
The ones I just told you of another show that I watch. Oh God. Yeah. Right now I'm watching The Cook of Castamar. That's a Spanish period drama. Yeah.
I forgot because you do speak Spanish.
I do. Yeah.
Like very well.
Sometimes. I'm not gonna lie though, I have the subtitles on. Okay.
Okay.
Oh my God, sorry, we're talking about Spanish. Okay, another one. This is like one of my all-time favorite things, and I watched it twice. Okay. It's called, in English, it's called The Time in Between.
Okay.
It's a few years old. It's a Spanish period drama about this gal who's a seamstress, and it takes place like during the Spanish Civil War.
Okay.
And I ate it up and I watched it twice. And I'm like, no, Catherine, you need to watch the stand-up comedy. You need to watch the and I'm just like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, don't force it. Don't force it.
Right.
Sometimes it's good. But too, it's just like not all stand-up is going to resonate with you anyway. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's there's a lot of pressure, I think, like watching comedy, because it's like if you're trying to watch something that you think should make you laugh, I find that if it doesn't make you laugh, if it doesn't make me laugh and I'm expecting it to be funny, then I start judging it a little bit. And then I get a little annoyed. And then I start comparing. Anyways, there's so many different types of comedy, just like there is with drama, and there's a spectrum.
I like that. There's a spectrum. So tell me about, like, how did you go from comedy to start podcasting about self-help? Like, what was the bridge there?
So literally at the beginning of 2020, I had this idea. The idea was to have a podcast where I could comedically talk about self-help stuff. But I was still putting it off, and I was putting it off, and I was putting it off. And then February of 2020, I decided to get sober. Mainly for me, my drug of choice was weed. And I won't get into the extreme details of which, I mean, I do talk about it in the show. But I knew that I needed to get sober, but I made the mistake of also deciding that I was going to wean off of my antidepressants around the same time. This was literally a month before COVID really hit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I guess because at that point we didn't know what was gonna happen, right? February
Exactly.
of 2020. Yeah.
So when it was pretty clear that shit was going down, I thought, well, I'm already a month into this thing. I'm not going to go back on my meds. I've already been weaning off them. Now, at some point, and I'm sure that there was a bunch of, basically it was like, okay, we're going into lockdown. I am weaning off of my meds and I got sober. This is a crazy time. If I don't start talking about what I'm doing right now while this is happening, what the fuck am I doing? What am I waiting for? So I downloaded the Anchor app on my phone and I went to the park and I just talked into my phone for an hour. The sound quality was shit. And but I just thought, let me put this out there, and it felt really good to just get it all recorded. And then I met a friend of mine who was also a life coach, and I started working with her, and she kind of encouraged me to put it out there and, you know, and start doing a thing. And I thought, well, let me just record something every week that I would consider to be an episode, even though for a while I felt like such a tool saying that I had a podcast. This like shame stuff that we do, you know, or this I started recording weekly episodes in my car because it just felt good to have the freedom, like the space and the sound quality. I mean, as long as I wasn't parked next to a highway, was at least half decent in my car. So I was in my car recording these things on my phone and updating whoever was listening about how I was feeling and just stuff that I'm learning this week. And I would just kind of go off on tangents. And I would get into these modes where I would, like all of the time, when I was thinking, nobody gives a shit. This is stupid. I'm all over the place. Is this helping anyone? Or is this? And I just told myself, I said, it doesn't matter. Just do it. Just do it. Just fucking do it. Just put it out there, because it started to feel really good for me to do that. It was very cathartic. It's like an audio diary of sorts. And then when I wasn't doing very well, I was kind of sharing about that too. And then when I got back on my Zoloft, you know, so I kind of documented that whole process of getting back on Zoloft and how it felt great. And then I started doing some interviews with people. But then when I started getting into the solo show in a bigger way, back in the spring, I took a break from the podcast. So I haven't put out any new episodes since the end of April, but I recorded one a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to start doing them again. But it was just something that I just felt like, it's so interesting because it was so cathartic. But what happened was I started putting pressure on myself to make the episodes better, or the sound quality better, or to maybe start interviewing people. And I'm realizing that if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to put something out there, this is something that I keep reminding myself. If I am going to keep putting something out there, let me do it because it feels good. If it feels good for me, somebody's going to get something from it. And also, who gives a shit? Yeah. The pressure to, God almighty. Anyway, so I have about like 30 something episodes, and I would like to be more consistent with it again.
Well, I look forward to future episodes, consistent or not. And one thing that really impressed me was you were very open, and this is in your solo show too. You were very, very open about your recovery from marijuana, which is
Mm.
super interesting because a lot of people, myself included, I've just always thought of like weed is not really addictive. Weed is a
Totally.
nice thing. And then I remember, I go to Codependents Anonymous and I would see like ads in the various Alano clubs for like marijuana anonymous. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. Oh, that's really interesting.
Totally. And it feels very confusing too, because weed is so much more accepted now and it's friggin' legal, right? In many places. But just like anything, hello, right? AA, sex and love addicts, and all of these. I mean, we can be addicted to anything. I mean, to be honest with you, I think as a human in this world, especially in this world now, I can't say about the world before I existed, but like we all are addicted to something.
Yeah, there's a book by an author named Ann Wilson Schaaf called When Society Becomes an Addict. And her thesis in that book is basically that all of us are addicted to something because this society is an addictive system. And the only people who are not addicted, in her opinion, are people who are going to some kind of 12-step group.
Yeah, or people who are, well, this doesn't negate them from being so, but the people in denial. It's so funny. But just to touch on, this is what really humors me, because I consider myself to be a double winner, right? Which is someone who is in Al-Anon and an addiction meeting for substance, whatever, AA or whatever. And it's so, I always say to myself, it's so Al-Anon of me to see other people's defects and denials and all of these things. So I have all of those myself because I have felt addicted to substances. In my case, this was, marijuana. And it's just so funny because I always feel like when I say it out loud, and I know I've mentioned this in my podcast episodes, but when I say that out loud, my addiction to marijuana, I feel like I can hear the collective pot smokers laughing and scoffing. But like I said, anything can be a thing, right? It feels like only individuals can decide if something is serving them or not serving them. And it's up to them to decide. I fucking love weed, but it was like so not serving me. It just wasn't. I can openly, I will walk down the street now and smell weed and think, oh, damn it, but it's like I know that I just know that it's not serving me. It doesn't help me, and it doesn't help me occasionally, because if I'm doing it occasionally, I'm still thinking about it constantly, anyway. Yeah, so I had to be open about that. It's like, if I'm going to have a podcast, if I'm going to do something where I'm trying to be open about my shit, I've always had this need to share a little bit what I thought was maybe too much. But I didn't have a choice, because if I was going to let this out, it's like I feel like even since I was young, I was someone who word vomited a little too much. Now, this doesn't mean that I was always owning it, but I was that kid who would go up to their friend when they were little and be like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe the dump I just took. Just so unnecessary, right? But that's like a small bananas. Is that a phrase? Small potatoes. The small potatoes example of something like that. But I love when I hear others talking about shit that I would consider to be substantial, and something that's vulnerable, and something that others might steer away from. There is nothing more unappealing to me, I think, than just genuine small talk, like genuine small talk. Like I love small talk when it's ironic and it's a little facetious and it's fun. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love positivity and optimism, but just like the small, just give me some substance, let's be positive, but let's also talk about the real shit, or let's mention,
Mm-hmm.
And so hearing other people do it, especially when I started to really get into listening to podcasts a few years ago, listening to like some of my favorite comics and actors, talk about this kind of shit. It was like, oh, I love that. That inspired me. So that gave me permission to want to do that myself.
So what's an example of one of those people who really inspired you?
When I started getting into podcasts in a big way, I mean, one example was Anna Faris's podcast, Unqualified. Because I love Anna Faris and she's hysterical. And she would share, but this is a huge one. This is the biggest, I mean, this is the one that still continues to inspire me, which is, Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert. I love that podcast. And I just listening to him. I mean, he's just, have you ever listened to Dax's podcast?
I may have, but I don't listen consistently.
And he's sober as well. And he's just, but how honest he is, and how it's just such a great podcast. That was widely inspirational. And then there's this guy named John Kim, who wasn't involved in comedy, but he goes by the Angry Therapist.
That's the Angry Therapist. I know. Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
And listening to him just talk off the cuff, and it didn't feel very well put together. But it was just like, let me just spout off some stuff that made me feel better about doing it. Because when I first started doing the podcast, I thought, well, should I make bullet points? Should I do notes? And it was like, no, that's going to make it worse. Let me just have a general idea and then just go off on a tangent. Fuck it. Because otherwise then I'm going to obsess.
Yeah.
And that will keep me from doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So John Kim stuff too. And yeah, he's great. He's great. And I look, and I'm a huge fan of Glennon Doyle. I love Glennon Doyle. I love Brene Brown.
I listened to both of those, and I have podcasted about feeling guilty about the fact that I listened to them, because I don't know, I'm like, oh, they're white women.
That is exactly what I was going to ask, if that's the reason why, because even as I said that,
yeah,
I felt that way too, which is interesting, because it's like, is that judgment even useful? But it kind of, I think it's important to think about the fact that, all right, but we're the,
Well, okay, this is how I feel about it. This was the conclusion I arrived at, and you can tell me if you disagree with this. If I were listening to white men podcasting, I would not be feeling the same kind of shame that I am feeling about listening to Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle. I think that there is a tendency to write white women off as frivolous, and I really think that Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle really dig into topics of racism, and Brene Brown has really outstanding guests on her show, and Glennon Doyle is starting to do that. And so I don't know, to me, I think they're actually pretty solid role models.
I agree.
But
I totally agree. But it is interesting that every, besides John Kim, all of the people who I had mentioned are all white and blonde.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's I had a thought and then it disappeared.
Yeah, that happens. That happens to me too. Well, and so I'm going to fill in the thought. I'm going to ask a question, which is, so I was actually inspired by you and I have to say the name of your podcast because it makes me so happy. The Self-Help Ideas Thoughts, the SHIT podcast. Love it so much. And I love the theme song.
Thank
Like
you.
sometimes I just listen to it just so I can go, self-help ideas.
Aw.
So
That's one of my best friend's husband singing.
oh, okay. That's
He's so
awesome.
weird. Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
So I decided to start, I've been in Codependents Anonymous for the last 10 years, and I decided to start talking about it. And, you know, because I was inspired by you and I listened to your interview with your sponsor in Marijuana Anonymous. And so I've done like, I do like little 3-minute things, 3-minute episodes. And I started to feel really ashamed because I was like, oh no, I'm violating the tradition that says that you're not supposed to talk publicly about it. But I'm also like, there are so many things about the program that I can't say in the rooms because you can't really critique the program in the rooms because I don't want to mess with a newcomer's head, you know, but
Totally.
I have some real issues with it. And so I've started talking about that. So I wonder, how do you sort of work around that? Which tradition is it? I should know. Is it?
I can't remember. I can't remember. But I think my biggest thing was like, oh no, is it wrong for me to say the name of it? But the thing is that we're just, you know, we're not giving any extreme details. I don't know the rules at the end of the day. It would obviously be a serious issue if I were, you know, saying names. Even if I wasn't saying names, and I would say, you know, this person, you know, but the fact that it's like, I attend these meetings, I like these, I don't see that being problematic. It doesn't feel like it needs to be, you know?
Yeah. I mean, because I get so much from hearing you talk about your recovery. You know, I get a lot from, I've been talking about some books I've read about recovery, like, you know, Charlotte Castle, Holly Whitaker, a friend of mine named Ann Wayman, all white women again, coincidentally, but you know, just the fact that they talk about their experience in recovery and that they offer their critiques of the 12-step rooms. I'm just like, I'm so grateful to them for doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And by the way, Dax does that on Armchair Expert as well.
does it? Okay.
Yeah, he's all over the map. I encourage you to check it out. And he's such a white man, but what I love about it, he's so fucking self-aware. Anyways.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I will definitely look into that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wondered about is you mentioned in your solo show that you found out that you are ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, officially, I always joked about it, but I guess officially, if you will, when I was 33, which was 3 years ago, which is so funny. And you know, what's interesting about that is even still knowing this or, you know, knowing this or having this diagnosis, I still feel like my whole life has been dictated by several things, one of which, of course, is ADHD, but that I still haven't given myself the chance to really dive into what those are. I feel like it could bring a lot, maybe more clarity. You know, I think there's more. I mean, I've read some articles, I've heard like various things, but I've been kind of ignoring. I mean, look, I don't know. I guess my point is that I think perhaps I still shame myself for certain things that I may be able to attribute to having ADHD, and that I haven't given myself, you know, the chance to be off the hook a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear that. I found out this year that I'm likely on the autism spectrum, and that completely changed how I look at so many of the things that I do.
How did that feel when you like?
It was a glorious, glorious relief. And I'm still in the process. It's really hard to get a diagnosis when you're a woman and when you're an adult. It's very, very challenging to get the official like testing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm in that process right now. And periodically mostly people have been really lovely, but sometimes someone will question it and be like, are you sure? Are you sure you're not just like making it up? And then I'll go, oh my God, like, am I taking up space I shouldn't take up? And then I'll stop and I'll remember, okay, remember when you found out, and remember how your whole life made sense? Like, that's why I want that diagnosis. So I can just relax and go, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
glad to
yeah.
hear that.
It's but it's funny because there's like a whole community of neurodivergent people. So that's like autism and ADHD, mostly autism and ADHD, but also like, OCD and pretty much anything, anxiety, depression, you name it. And it's really beautiful to see people like you and me like accepting ourselves and saying, hey, we are like this and
Yeah.
it's good that we're like this, because I bet like I can imagine, do you think that your ADHD makes you like a better comedian, a better actor, a better drummer?
Probably. But since I don't know anything different, I can't say for sure, but I would like to think that, you know. Um, yeah.
Because it's hard for me to imagine a neurotypical person sitting in a car with a phone recording an hour-long podcast about some. I mean, I'm sure there are some that could, but I don't know. That's kind of what comes up for me.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you could be right. Is it mainly because I'm in a damn car and because I don't have an actual microphone and a setup? No, but I mean, it is funny. It is goofy, you know. Um, but that is interesting that you say that though, because in a way, I mean, I have such trouble sitting still.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, even now, I mean, I guess I'm sitting still now, but I'm fidgeting, I'm like moving my toes and I'm touching my foot, whatever, scratching my ass. Just kidding. But I guess I was going to say it is interesting that I'm just sitting in my car. Sitting in my car though does actually that's you know what? Sitting in my car might kind of give me the illusion that I am in motion, that I kind of am going somewhere in a minute. Because I mean, I could have very easily recorded these things on my phone in some sort of a makeshift something in my apartment over the last year and a half. And I just didn't want to. I wanted to be in my car, parked somewhere random.
Yeah, I have to do it so the people I live with won't hear me. Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
It's the illusion of privacy being in the car.
Totally. It's like when you pull up at a red light and you can see someone picking their nose. And it's like we feel just nestled
Right.
in between this glass and metal.
Right.
And it's all see-through.
Because if it wasn't, we'd be getting in accidents.
Exactly.
So, okay, well, I'm glad we have that in common as well. So I'm curious about when is the next time that people can see your outstanding solo show, I Have Too Many Feelings?
Thank you. It's actually this coming Tuesday. It's November 2nd, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 10:30 Eastern, and it is streaming again, but people can watch in person. It's at the Santa Monica Playhouse. It's for the Binge Fringe Festival. And I'm really excited to do it again because it's been almost 2 months.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And how has doing a solo show, like how does that compare to the other mediums that you've worked in? Because you've done a 2-person show and you've done stand-up and you've done podcasting. Like, what's the difference for you with solo theater?
The biggest difference is that even though I have accountability with my director and coaches and other people, at the end of the day, I have to hold myself most accountable to prepare for it.
Mm-hmm.
And but what's nice about it is also it's that I know that I can trust myself once I'm out there, even if something doesn't quite go as planned, or I miss a line or something, I know that I can work with it and somehow make it funny and awkward, but entertaining. Because that happened, I think, all 3 of the Fringe shows.
That you missed a line and had to.
That something would happen, or I would be a pause, you know, and I think people would maybe attribute it to the ADHD, but like there were just like little happy accidents that I think probably made it more entertaining. But knowing I could go out there and I guess trust myself, as opposed to perhaps performing with others if somebody doesn't. But but simultaneously, it's also a lot of pressure too. It's like, well, it's just me, so I can't fall back on anything either. I mean, it's fun playing with people on a stage. I had so much fun doing my Lady Fart show with my comedy partner Maria. But what is also great about the solo shows is that because we're playing all these multiple characters, it does feel like we are, playing with other people on stage, because we are. I mean, we're having conversations with other people, so that's very helpful.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. How was the memorization process for you as a neurodivergent person?
That was interesting. What was very helpful for me, and I can't imagine doing it any other way, I broke it up into 4 weeks. I audio recorded myself doing the lines, and I divided it into 4 weeks, and each week I was learning like 12 minutes or so of material, 10 to 12 minutes. So for a week, I would just listen to it a few times a day, more and more, but just hearing it in my ears, that was great, because I am not going to sit my ass down and read over a script. Now, there's going to have to come a time when I'm probably doing that. But that made it so much easier. I could go on walks, I could work out, I could just have it on, listening to myself say it over and over again, and I would start to say it out loud. That was, I mean, I was terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do, but the recording of it, I thought, this will make a huge, difference. Hi, Benny. Say hi.
You look so pissed off. No,
hi,
I'm confused. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Benny. Okay.
That's so funny. Yeah, I found that recording it also worked very well for me.
Yeah.
It was really a lifesaver. So it's cool to hear that you did that too.
Yeah. I love, by the way, in your show, it's just so amazing to me. I never mastered, even though I'm also a drummer, I haven't mastered being able to sing and talk or do anything of that sort while drumming. I could do a little bit, but I haven't mastered it. And when you would just be sitting there and go into a song and you'd be like playing the beats and stuff, I mean, that's just like so, it's like, God damn.
Thank you. I learned that in Brazil. It was the weirdest thing. I had to write it down. One time I wrote it down and then I did it. And after that one time of writing it down, somehow I could do it. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but that was my process in learning how to sing and play.
Yeah. Writing it down, as in writing the lyrics and the notes.
I had to use notation. And so what I did was I notated the melody and then I notated the rhythm that I had to play so I could see visually how they lined up. And then I started like looking at it and practicing it. And after that, I could do it. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that makes total sense. I don't think I've read drum music since I was a senior in high school and in the drum line. But I mean, come on. It's like, I'm sure I could pick it back up again.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, I mean, so many drummers don't read notes anyway. I mean, I'm a little embarrassed about the fact that I read notes. In Brazil, they used to make fun of me for that because down there, they think reading is silly.
No, I think it's an incredible skill because, I mean, I think it's admirable to be able to read music.
I I do appreciate that. I think I wish I learned better by ear. I think sometimes that the sheet music does become a crutch, but I agree with you. It's a good thing to know how to do.
Yeah.
Are you still playing drums, by the way?
I play on my drum pad, but I don't have a set at the moment. Every once in a while I'll find myself at a guitar center and I'll go into the drum room and I'll just kind of play around.
This whale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, if we do Fringe again, me and you are going to professional drum shop. Like we're going to go there and we're going to like hang out. And then maybe we're just going to like set up in front of it and we're going to busk and it's going to be awesome.
I would love that. I would love that.
That's our plan. Next time we do. So like what's next for you? So you've got your show. Remind me, November, it's a Tuesday.
November 2nd.
November 2nd, 7:30 p.m. PST.
7:30 p.m. It's about an hour long, maybe 65 minutes. And what is next for me? What I would really like to do is get this around. I'm having a reel of the show cut. I'm going to send this out. I would like to perform this around, potentially get into the college circuit. I would obviously eventually like to have this show. I mean, look, I want a Netflix special or something special. I want a special and I want it to be filmed and televised. That's what I want. So whether it's this show modified or otherwise, that's what I would love to do. You know, I am auditioning. You know, there's, you know, little projects here and there that I'm doing with friends, but yeah, but mainly it's this show and getting back into doing that podcast, which I've also been putting off, but I'm either going to create a separate social media account or use my own, but I want to start incorporating some videos for my shit podcast where I can just, you know, do some stuff and create videos because I want to entertain, but I want to be able to inspire and entertain at the same time. An inspirational comic, if you will.
Awesome.
Sounds so annoying to say. It's true.
Well, I mean, I guess all comics are inspirational to some degree. Maybe some of them inspire us what not to be, but you're going to inspire us what to be.
I hope so.
So where can people find you on social media?
My social media accounts, I mean, Instagram is the one I use the most. And the handle is literally at It's Bethany V. So ITS, and then my name, Bethany, BETHANY, last name VEE. It's Bethany V.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will make sure that all of that is posted so everybody knows where to follow you. And hey, thanks to you and to your cat for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it.
Catherine, thank you so much. This was lovely. Thank you. I think you are amazing. I hope to see you in person again soon. And I'm very proud of you for that show that you created.
Thank you.
Yes, no, maybe. You know, it's just such an important, so unique, It's just so great, so talented. It's just like, I mean, those musical numbers that you bust into just blew my mind every time. I'm like, how is she doing this? It's like, it's one thing to learn the lines and to learn the stuff, but the musical numbers were just wild.
Thank you.
You have a true gift.
I appreciate that. Neurodivergent power. Cool. Well, now my head's really big and none of my hats are going to fit. So I have to go.
Good.
Like pop it so all the steam comes out. But again, thank you so much. And I am so looking forward to your show and to new episodes of shit.
Yes. Shit. Thank you so much, Catherine. I love you.
I love you too. Bye.